Morbid Facts, Part 563. In 2000, 4-year-old Kian Hongyan survived being hit by a speeding truck driver but had to have both of her legs amputated. Sadly, due to her family's financial struggles, she couldn't be provided with prosthetics and instead had to improvise with half of a basketball. She became known as China's basketball girl, a symbol of resilience despite overwhelming odds. A few years later, her story went viral and she was offered free prosthetics by a hospital in Beijing when she turned 11. A pair of identical twins from Brazil would use their resemblance to impersonate each other and date as many women as possible, and then defend themselves from allegations that they were cheating on their girlfriends. They would even take turns having intercourse with the same women by routinely swapping with each other without the women knowing. After one of them got a woman pregnant and a DNA test was inconclusive when both twins refused to say who was the father, a judge ordered both of the twins to pay maintenance to the little girl. The judge said they were taking away from the girl's right to know who her real father was. Morbid Facts, Part 562. Atticus Shaffer, who played Brick in Modern Family, has type 4 osteogenesis imperfecta, aka brittle bone disease. The painful disorder prevents his body from building strong bones, causing his bones to break rather easily even from minor trauma. The 4'8" actor has fractured his bones countless times and received dozens of plates, rods, and screws in his legs. Despite this, Shaffer has noted that his struggles with the genetic disorder have helped him become more empathetic and compassionate as he's had to constantly overcome extreme pain. In 2014, some sick piece of human garbage glued dozens of razor blades to playground equipment at a park in Illinois. Several children cut themselves while climbing the monkey bars or using the slide, but the perpetrator was never caught. In 2012, a married cop from Atlanta named William Martinez died from a heart attack while having a threesome with his friend and a woman who wasn't his wife. Afterwards, Martinez's wife was awarded $3 million in a malpractice lawsuit when the jury found that his doctor didn't properly diagnose his heart condition or warn him to end all physical activity until further testing was completed. If you were born prematurely, you can thank this man for your life. In the early 1900s, most physicians believed that premature babies were weaklings that were unfit to survive into adulthood and therefore not worth saving. But a sideshow entertainer named Martin Cooney decided to change that with his innovative incubators he called child hatcheries. He would display premature babies at amusement parks around the world through his exhibit called the Infantorium, where visitors could pay 25 cents to view a room full of glass boxes containing tiny babies. Cooney would use the earnings to work with nurses and doctors to do everything he could to keep the babies alive. His goal was to demonstrate to the public that premature babies could be saved with proper care. Through his efforts, Cooney saved over 7,000 lives, and by 1943, nearly every hospital in America had one of his incubators. His work completely changed the public's perception of premature babies and significantly contributed to the development of modern neonatal care. The most morbid facts of all time, Part 2. The Grinch as a kid was played by an 18-year-old actor with dwarfism. Sadly, he died of heart failure just 2 years after the movie released. When a photojournalist took this picture of a little girl in Syria, she raised her arms in surrender because she thought the camera was a gun. In 2009, Moscow native Julia Popova was stabbed in the neck by a mugger, but she was in so much shock that she walked all the way home without even realizing that the knife was embedded in her neck, just millimeters from her spinal cord. She spent more than an hour with the blade inside of her before finally going to the hospital. In 1987, Kenneth Parks drove 12 miles to his mother-in-law's house and stabbed her to death in the middle of the night. But he didn't receive any jail time because Kenneth's lawyer was able to prove that he was sleepwalking the entire time. In 2012, a woman from New York donated her kidney to save the life of her boss. Her boss later fired her when she took too long to recover from the operation. Mohammed Bajay was an Iranian serial killer who raped and killed at least 40 young boys throughout the early 2000s. But his crimes only gained national attention because of the way in which he was executed. He was stoned by a mob, lashed 100 times, stabbed by the brother of one of his victims, and then hanged. Ever since she was a little girl, Jewel Shuping always wanted to be blind. So in 2006, she poured drain cleaner into her eyes and fully blinded herself. She says she's now happier than ever after fulfilling her lifelong wish. A Massachusetts man named Kenny Waters was wrongfully imprisoned for 18 years for murder. He was finally freed in 2001 after his high school dropout sister went to law school to prove his innocence. Sadly, he died 6 months after his release in a freak accident. After a mass shooting, you would expect complete silence at the crime scene. But police say one of the eeriest things is all the phones that ring when family members are trying to find out if their loved ones are okay. In the wake of his recent arrest, let's take a look at some morbid facts that you didn't know about P. Diddy. Diddy's father, Melvin Combs, was an associate of convicted New York drug lord Frank Lucas. When Diddy was just 2 years old, his father was gunned down in a related gang attack. In 1991, P. Diddy organized an AIDS fundraiser after a charity basketball game. The event was oversold and a stampede occurred that resulted in the deaths of 9 people. He was quickly criticized by the mayor for letting inexperienced people plan the event and selling way too many tickets. A former FBI agent has claimed that Tupac's former boss Suge Knight financed the murder of Biggie Smalls in 1997, but the intended target was actually Biggie's boss P. Diddy, who was in the car in front of Biggie at the time. According to her lawsuit filed last year, when Cassie Ventura hit a rough patch in her relationship with Diddy in 2012, she briefly dated Kid Cudi. Combs was apparently so angry at this that he mentioned he wanted to blow up the rapper's car. The lawsuit reads, around that time, Kid Cudi's car exploded in his driveway. Here are some morbid facts about your favorite Disney movies. Author Lewis Carroll wanted to marry an 11-year-old girl named Alice when he was 31. It's widely believed that his book Alice in Wonderland was inspired by his obsession for little Alice Liddell. If Finding Nemo was scientifically accurate, Nemo's dad would have turned into a female and mated with Nemo after his mom died. When Disney released Princess and the Frog, it caused a minor salmonella outbreak across the country. Over 50 kids were hospitalized after kissing a frog. The reason why Beauty and the Beast was written was to encourage young girls to become more accepting of arranged marriages. Following 9/11, an entire scene from Lilo and Stitch had to be edited. A 747 airliner that was flying through a city was changed to a spaceship flying through the mountains. Here are some morbid facts about Pablo Escobar. In other countries, the mafia will sometimes make witnesses disappear so that they can't testify in court. But Pablo Escobar once made half the Supreme Court of Colombia disappear in the Palace of Justice siege in 1985. Throughout his career as a kingpin, Escobar was responsible for killing at least 4,000 people, including an estimated 200 judges and 1,000 police, journalists, and government officials. Escobar's personal hitman, John J. Velasquez, was responsible for around 3,500 of those murders. But he was released from prison in 2014 and afterwards became a popular YouTuber. Pablo was making so much money that he lost about 10% of his income due to rats and mold destroying the cash, amounting to around $2.1 billion per year. When Escobar's daughter wanted a unicorn for her birthday, he bought her a horse and stapled a cone to its head and wings to its back. The horse ended up dying from a horrible infection a few weeks later. At his luxurious estate in Puerto Triunfo, Escobar put together a private zoo filled with giraffes, hippos, elephants, and other animals. But after his death, 4 hippos were left unattended on the property and ended up thriving in the local environment. They ended up reproducing, and it's now estimated that there may be as many as 100 hippos roaming the surrounding areas, posing a massive invasive species threat for the local ecosystem. This is when streaming gets taken way too far. A Russian YouTuber was recently sentenced to 6 years in a maximum security prison after he allegedly caused his pregnant girlfriend to die from hypothermia during a live stream. Known as Stas Reflay, the streamer reportedly forced his girlfriend onto a freezing cold balcony wearing nothing but her underwear. Sometime later, he pulled her back inside and appeared confused, saying, "Chat, she has no pulse, she's pale, she's not breathing." He then laid her lifeless body on the couch, opened up a bottle of liquor, and continued streaming for an additional 2 hours before authorities finally arrived. The streamer's actions were apparently part of a disturbing trend known as trash streaming that's popular in Russia, where streamers perform dangerous or degrading stunts for donations. According to reports, Stas was sent $1,000 by a viewer to watch him abuse his girlfriend. The 34-year-old only ended his stream after police entered his home and pronounced his girlfriend dead. Let's get into the holiday spirit and take a look at some of the most morbid Christmas facts that I've posted over the years. George Michael, who's known for the Christmas classic Last Christmas I Gave You My Heart, died on Christmas Day in 2016 from a heart condition. All of the characters in Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas were inspired by hallucinations he had during a fever that nearly killed him. In December of 1959, Dr. Harold Perelson murdered his wife with a hammer before taking his own life, all while his 2 little kids watched in horror. For the next 50 years afterwards, the home remained completely abandoned and untouched. Intruders over the years claim that the Christmas tree, unopened presents, and decorations could still be seen exactly as they were on that murderous night in 1959. While filming for The Grinch, the thick makeup and prosthetics made Jim Carrey feel like he was buried alive each day. It became so brutal for him that they had to hire a former CIA agent to teach him techniques for coping with torture. In 1932 Arizona, a man dressed as Santa Claus jumped from a plane to parachute into a Christmas parade. Sadly, his parachute failed to open, and hundreds of parents had to cover their kids' eyes as Santa plummeted to his death. South Park's Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh originated when Trey Parker was potty training at age 4. His father always told him that if he didn't flush his Mr. Hanky, it would come to life and murder him in his sleep. In 2018, a 66-year-old Canadian man was arrested for murdering 8 people over a 7-year span. During that time, he worked as a mall Santa in Toronto. Many of the indoor scenes in the movie Elf were shot inside an abandoned mental asylum in Canada. The Grinch as a kid was played by an 18-year-old actor with dwarfism. Sadly, he died of heart failure just 2 years after the movie released. There's a convincing fan theory that suggests Kevin McAllister from Home Alone grew up to become the serial killer Jigsaw from the Saw movie franchise. On Christmas Eve in 2008, Bruce Pardo entered his in-laws' California home while dressed as Santa Claus. But instead of giving his family a festive surprise, Bruce unleashed hell. He crashed the party of 25 people and took 9 lives, either by shooting them or dousing them in flames with his homemade flamethrower. With his Santa suit melted to his skin from the fire, he drove to his brother's house and turned the gun on himself. Morbid Facts, Part 480. Known for playing Thanos in Season 2 of Squid Game, actor Top is an actual rapper in the K-pop group Big Bang who fell out of the spotlight for several years. When he was serving his mandatory military service in 2017, Top was busted for marijuana use and suspended from his duty. A few days after being discharged, the rapper was found unconscious in police barracks after overdosing on Xanax. He had attempted to take his own life and spent nearly a week recovering in the hospital. As the Nazi regime gained power, actor Lionel Royce lost his job and began receiving death threats for being a Jew. So he took refuge in the Alps, grew a beard, and dyed all of his hair by bathing in diluted hydrogen. He then returned to Germany claiming to be a self-taught peasant actor, and was eventually praised by the Nazis as proof of superiority of Aryan blood. Colombian man Christian Montenegro, who claims to be engaged to a rag doll, has revealed that his fiancée Natalia is pregnant with their 3rd child. He also shared his plans for a dream wedding with his beloved partner, with whom he already has a son and daughter. When questioned about his bizarre relationship, Montenegro replied, "If it weren't for the dolls, I'd be more alone than anyone. At least I have something." And Christian certainly isn't the first person to fall in love and start a family with a rag doll. In 2022, Maravone Marias had an actual wedding ceremony with her ragdoll husband Marcelo that was attended by 250 people. But the woman has recently expressed serious doubt in their relationship after she caught her husband cheating on her with another woman at a local motel. Morbid Facts, Part 407. Nicknamed the Princess of R&B, popular singer Aaliyah lost her life in a tragic private plane crash when she was just 22 years old. Despite being warned that there was far too much wait for a safe flight, she and her entourage were eager to return home and demanded to leave immediately. Shortly after takeoff, the plane lost its balance and crashed just 200 feet from the runway, killing everyone on board. In 2013, the body of 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson was found inside of a rolled-up gym mat at his Georgia high school. Authorities later concluded that he had become trapped upside down while trying to retrieve his shoes, and eventually died from positional asphyxia. In 2002, schizophrenic British artist Richard Sumner entered a remote forest in Wales. He apparently handcuffed himself to a tree and threw the keys out of reach. His skeleton was found 3 years later, with evidence suggesting he likely regretted his decision. Morbid Facts, Part 457. In 2002, Pennsylvania mother Brenda Heist completely disappeared after dropping her 2 kids off at school. 11 years later, she was found living with a group of homeless people in Key West, Florida. Investigators found out she was upset about an upcoming divorce and wanted to completely abandon her life as she knew it. Brenda survived by living under bridges and eating scraps of food until she got tired of running and decided to turn herself in. Her family wanted nothing to do with her since they thought she'd been dead for years, and her ex-husband was even treated as a suspect for her supposed murder. Just last year, 16-year-old Marie Antoinette Coutillo tragically died after her phone fell into the bathtub while she was on a call with her friend. She'd been charging her phone while using it and apparently dropped it in the water at some point, resulting in her electrocution. Marie was eventually found unresponsive by her parents and rushed to the hospital, but doctors were unable to save her. Morbid Facts, Part 436. In 2009, 25-year-old chemistry student Vladimir Likonos died after his chewing gum exploded in his mouth. He had a strange habit of dipping his gum in citric acid for extra sourness, but accidentally used an explosive powder from his chemistry experiments that was 4 times stronger than TNT. Likely caused by the reaction with his saliva or chewing pressure, the explosion blew off his jaw and led to his eventual death. According to a 2011 study, children exposed to family violence show the same patterns of brain activity as soldiers exposed to combat. Throughout Chinese history, it was common for parents to castrate their boys as a way to escape poverty. Both the shaft and the nuts would be sliced off with a knife at the same time. These castrated members of society, known as eunuchs, were considered thoroughly pure and therefore qualified as high-ranking civil servants. This disturbing system lasted until 1924, with the last imperial eunuch dying in 1996. Morbid Facts, Part 508. Right after purchasing some hot coffee from McDonald's in 2004, 79-year-old Stella Liebeck accidentally spilled it into her lap, causing horrific third-degree burns. The woman quickly went into shock and was hospitalized for 8 days while undergoing skin grafts. Since the burns were so bad, her lady parts had melted and fused to her legs. Stella suffered permanent disfigurement after the incident and was partially disabled for 2 years. She then sued McDonald's for making the coffee way too hot and was only seeking $20,000 to cover her medical bills. But McDonald's refused to settle with Stella as the media completely demonized her, calling her the poster child of frivolous lawsuits. However, people quickly changed their tune when photos of the horrific burns finally released. With one of the jurors being so traumatized, he forced his wife to quit drinking hot coffee. Stella ended up winning $2.9 million in damages from the lawsuit, but her life was never the same again. Morbid Facts, Part 511. RFK Jr.'s gravelly speaking voice is caused by a rare neurological condition he developed in his early 40s called spasmodic dysphonia, which causes the muscles that open and close the vocal cords to spasm involuntarily. Here's what he used to sound like before this condition versus after.
And if somebody dumps something into the river that's poison, and it goes into a drinking water intake, and children drink that drinking water, that is child abuse.
I think those vaccines we need to have, again, true double-blind placebo-controlled trials on that. There's 25% of Americans.
While the true cause is unknown, people who do a lot of public speaking are far more likely to develop this condition. RFK required a titanium bridge in his vocal folds to be able to speak at all, and receives Botox shots in his vocal cords every 4 months. He says it's painful to hear himself speak and feels sorry for those who have to listen to him. Morbid Facts about Kurt Cobain, Part 2. Throughout most of his life, Kurt struggled with chronic bronchitis and intense pain from an undiagnosed stomach condition, which he claimed was the only reason he started using heroin so that he could relieve the pain. Kurt was revived from overdosing multiple times and checked in and out of rehab constantly. He was reportedly very uncomfortable with his fame and felt trapped by his success, resulting in a turbulent spiral of drug addictions and mental health problems. Cobain's mental health was a roller coaster as he suffered from depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, and crippling anxiety. After he bought his LA mansion, Kurt reportedly preferred to hang out in his walk-in closet because the large space of the rest of the house made him anxious. He also suffered from severe body dysmorphia as he never felt comfortable in his own skin. He was insecure about his small frame and often wore multiple layers or baggy clothing to hide it. For this reason, he was reportedly wearing 3 pairs of pants when his body was found. Morbid Facts, Part 496. Last summer, 36-year-old Italian surfer Giuliana Manfrini died in a total freak accident while surfing off the coast of Indonesia. When she was catching a wave, a swordfish suddenly leaped out of the water and stabbed her directly in the chest with its bill. Despite immediate first aid from her surfing buddies and being rushed to a local hospital, she couldn't be saved. Here's the grave of a woman who chose to leave her name off and instead gave it the inscription, "I was somebody." She apparently told the cemetery sexton that eventually nobody would remember her anyway, so this inscription would at least be more memorable than she was. While on an African safari in 1963, Ernest Hemingway survived 2 plane crashes in a row. The first plane collided with a telephone wire and wound up in the Nile, leaving him with minor injuries. While Hemingway was being rescued from this first crash, the rescue plane also crashed. The plane caught on fire, so Ernest had to smash the door open with his head, causing extensive burns and a fractured skull. The novelist was presumed dead until he walked out of the jungle in high spirits, carrying bananas and a bottle of gin.